In 1969, Sears, Roebuck and Company sold 1 out of every 2 appliances purchased in the United States. 1 in 3 tires. 1 in 4 paint cans. It had 250,000 employees, a private credit card empire, a real estate portfolio worth a fortune, and the tallest building in the world. In 2018, it filed for bankruptcy. This is the long fall of Sears. To understand what Sears was, you have to understand the catalog. In 1888, a Minnesota watchmaker named Richard Warren Sears printed a small mail-order flyer for watches. By 1894, with his partner Alva Roebuck, he was printing a 500-page book. By 1908, the catalog was 1,000 pages and weighed 5 pounds. In rural America at the turn of the 20th century, which is to say in most of America, the Sears catalog was the way you bought almost anything you didn't grow, kill, or build yourself. It sold cream separators and wash tubs. It sold pianos. It sold prefabricated houses shipped flat on a rail car that you could assemble on your own land. Over 70,000 of these Sears homes were sold between 1908 and 1940, and many of them are still standing. It sold tombstones. In 1905, it sold dental anesthesia kits. In 1908, it sold automobiles. If a product existed and could be packed in a wooden crate, the Sears catalog sold it, often cheaper than the local general store could buy at wholesale. The catalog was not just a way to sell things. It was a covenant. In a country where most consumers could not visit a real store, Sears printed prices in plain English, accepted returns, refunded money, and stood behind every item. In an era of widespread fraud, this was a startling innovation. By 1925, Sears was opening physical stores, slowly, deliberately, in the cities where its customers were now moving. By 1931, the stores were generating more revenue than the catalog. For roughly 50 years, from the late 1920s to the late 1970s, Sears was, in the literal sense, the largest retailer on earth. Not the largest American retailer, the largest, full stop. By the late 1960s, 1 in every 200 American workers worked for Sears. The company's revenue was equivalent to roughly 1% of the entire United States gross domestic product. Sears was not just a store. It was an ecosystem. It owned Allstate Insurance, which it had founded in 1931. It owned the Discover Card, which it would launch in 1985. It owned Coldwell Banker Real Estate. It owned Dean Witter Reynolds, a major brokerage firm. At its peak, the company that sold you your washing machine also insured your house, financed your purchases, sold your home, and managed your retirement portfolio. It was attempting, in the early 1980s, to become the financial services backbone of middle-class American life. In May 1973, the company moved its headquarters into the Sears Tower in Chicago. 110 stories. 1,450 feet to the roof. At the moment of its opening, it was the tallest building in the world. It would remain so for 25 years. The tower was, in a way the company perhaps did not fully understand, a tombstone. You build a building that big at the moment of your absolute peak. After that, the only direction is down. In 1962, the same year Sears opened its 3,000th retail store, a former JCPenney trainee named Sam Walton opened a single discount store in Rogers, Arkansas. He called it Walmart. For the first 20 years of its existence, Walmart was a regional curiosity, small, rural, southern, beneath Sears' notice. In 1980, Walmart had $1.2 billion in sales. Sears had $25 billion. The two companies were not, by any measure used inside Sears headquarters, in the same league. By 1990, Walmart had passed Sears in annual revenue. By 1991, Walmart had passed Sears in market capitalization. What had happened between 1980 and 1990 was not that Walmart became bigger than Sears. What happened was that Walmart built a logistics system Sears did not understand. Cross-docking, hub and spoke distribution, direct from manufacturer supply chains, everyday low-price merchandising instead of cycling sales and promotions. Walmart was not selling things differently. It was moving things differently. Sears, meanwhile, was running a logistics system designed for the catalog era. Goods moved from suppliers to regional Sears warehouses, often controlled by Sears itself, on a slow, rotating inventory cycle. The catalog headquarters in Chicago controlled what stores received, what they featured, and at what price. It was an empire run by mail. It was being outcompeted by an empire run by truck. In 1993, Sears made a structural decision that would be debated for the next 30 years. It killed the catalog. After 104 years of continuous publication, the Sears Big Book, the general merchandise catalog that had built the company, was discontinued. The official rationale was that catalog sales had become unprofitable. The functional consequence was that Sears voluntarily exited the direct-to-consumer mail order business at almost exactly the moment that a Seattle bookseller named Amazon was about to demonstrate that direct-to-consumer mail order was the future of retail. In 2004, Sears, by then weakened by years of declining same-store sales, merged with Kmart in an $11 billion transaction. The merger was engineered by a hedge fund manager named Edward Lampert, whose firm ESL Investments had taken Kmart out of bankruptcy and now controlled the combined company, Sears Holdings Corporation. Lampert became the chairman and eventually the CEO. He was widely described in the financial press as a brilliant capital allocator. He had never run a retail business. The official rationale for the merger was synergy. Combine two struggling middle market retailers and create one stronger one. What actually happened was that Sears Holdings began to function less like a retailer and more like a financial holding company. Real estate was sold off and leased back. Brands, Craftsman Tools, Kenmore Appliances, Land's End Apparel were spun off, sold, or licensed. Stores were closed. Capital was extracted from the operating business and returned to shareholders, of whom the largest, by a substantial margin, was ESL Investments. Between 2010 and 2018, Sears Holdings reported losses every single year. Total accumulated losses over that period exceeded $11 billion. Same-store sales declined every quarter for years on end. The number of stores fell from over 4,000 at the peak of the combined company to under 700 by 2018. Employees fell from nearly 400,000 to under 100,000. Each year, the company announced a new turnaround plan. Each year, the same elements appeared. A new technology platform, a new loyalty program, Shop Your Way, a new partnership, a new focus on the most profitable categories. What did not appear was investment. Sears stores were visibly undermaintained. Carpets were threadbare. Display lighting was burned out. Inventory was thin. Customers walking into a Sears in 2015 were walking into a building that the company had chosen not to renovate. You could feel it in the air. In 2013, Lampert split Land's End off as a separate company and distributed it to Sears Holdings shareholders. In 2014, he created Seritage Growth Properties, a real estate investment trust, and transferred over 200 Sears store properties to it. Sears would then lease those properties back from Seritage. The largest shareholder of Seritage was, of course, ESL Investments. To shareholders, this was financial engineering. To employees, it looked like the parts being sold off the car they were still trying to drive. On October 15, 2018, Sears Holdings Corporation filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. 132 years after the company began as a mail-order watch business in a railway station in North Redwood, Minnesota. The filing listed approximately $6.9 billion in assets against approximately $11.3 billion in liabilities. At the time of filing, the company still operated roughly 700 stores. By early 2019, after a contested bankruptcy auction, Lampert's hedge fund acquired the remaining operating assets through a new entity called Transformco. About 400 stores survived the immediate process. As of the time of writing, Transformco operates only a handful of Sears stores in the United States. The catalog is gone, the tower is renamed, the brands are scattered, Craftsman is now owned by Stanley Black & Decker, Kenmore is licensed, Allstate has been independent since the 1990s, Discover Card was spun off in 2007, Land's End is its own company. What remains under the Sears name is a small, mostly online, mostly nostalgic shadow of what was, for half a century, the largest retailer on earth. You can tell the story of Sears as a story about Amazon. You can tell it as a story about Walmart. You can tell it as a story about a hedge fund that financialized a retailer to death. You can tell it as a story about a catalog company that did not realize it was a logistics company. You can tell it as a story about middle-class America itself, the rural, then suburban, then mall-bound consumer base that Sears served and which fragmented in the early 21st century along lines Sears never adapted to. All of these stories are true. What unites them is something simpler. Sears was, at its peak, the place where most Americans bought most of their durable goods. The decline of Sears is the story of every channel through which that statement was true. The catalog, the mall, the brands portfolio, the financial services empire being colonized, one by competitors who understood that channel better than Sears did. No single competitor killed Sears. The category itself dissolved underneath it. In 1969, 1 in every 2 appliances sold in America passed through a Sears store. In 2018, one company filed for bankruptcy and 132 years of the American century closed behind it. The tower still stands in Chicago. It is named after something else now. Thank you for watching The Long Fall. If decline stories like this one interest you, the channel will be here.